You are the creator of your reality. Create what you want, but you have to put the work in. It's not just going to be like this. If you want it to be like this, there's many stages to get to that in order to raise yourself up to those higher states of consciousness. You have to do the fucking work to get up there. All of us, every single one of us. Why are we idolizing anything? We should be idolizing love.
All right. So we ought to just chill, wait till it dies down. Might be a couple of seconds. Today we have a very special guest, an enlightening conscious leader, social media influencer who is really motivating others online to connect the trinity of their body, mind, and soul, and to live in your highest frequency. He is a businessman, athlete, and he is an online distributor of the groundbreaking alkaline water filter system, which he will talk about more, called Kangen water. I'm very blessed to have Bryan Totten on the podcast today. I met Bryan originally through my close friend Dylan. Dylan was telling me how I needed to meet Bryan because he was just had this energy. I met Bryan last week. Our first conversation, I immediately picked up on that energy, and I could already tell that this person was radiating with positive vibration and wisdom. And I'm very blessed to have him on the podcast. What exactly would you say led you on this spiritual journey of raising consciousness and helping others?
Well, it started back. We had to go backtrack to when I was 16, 17 years old. So I found a soulmate, which I think there's multiple soulmates that you can find throughout life. That's a whole other topic of discussion. But I found one of my soulmates at 17, and she died of a sudden heart attack out of nowhere. So that initially brought me into death with love. The backstory to that, even more so, she was sexually assaulted by my best friend's brother prior to us dating. So then once we started to date, I had to now learn how to really adapt to somebody that was emotionally, physically, spiritually not balanced because of what took place. I was very unconscious to all of that, even at that age, but now I can look back at it and that's what I was doing. But back then I would try holding her certain ways. I would say something, kicking, screaming, crying my arms at 16, 17 years old. So I was brought into being this compassionate provider at such a young age, and I was still very dumb to it. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So as we progressed through this, she's now putting the dude up on charges, and rightfully so, because 100% it took place. I'm a person of peace. I don't like war. I don't like animosity. I don't like anger. I don't like division. I don't like any of those things. So it doesn't make sense to me. It's never computed to me. So as we're going into now her putting him up on charges, I'm saying yes to her lawyer that it did happen and no to his lawyer that it didn't happen, because it was my second family. We had a group of friends, like 5 to 8 of us, that were always playing the same sport. Football, basketball, baseball, we're always playing together. Then we'd also go party at the same house. Every weekend we were at this house, drinking, partying, doing that stuff. So once I started dating her, those guys would talk to me on the court or the field, whatever sport we were playing, but then once that was over, then they would not talk to me because I was dating the enemy. So nobody would converse with me once we left that sport. She didn't know this. I was protecting her so that she would not have to know that I was going through this type of stuff, because she didn't need extra stress on top of her after everything that she's going through and what the process is and everything like that. So I didn't want to bring more stress into her life, so I was holding it inside of me. But she would ask me, why aren't you hanging out with your friends? Oh, they're doing something. I don't know, just make up excuses, the bullshit that would come out. Further down the line, my parents wanted me to then break up with her because they were afraid that she too would then cause me to be put on rape charges. So they were trying, and it took me many years to forgive my parents for that thought process because it didn't make sense to me. But they were afraid that she was then going to say, Bryan raped me, and now my life was going to go down into a spiral. We knew that wasn't going to take place. I knew it, and then eventually, over the years, they knew it wasn't going to take place, but they were protecting their baby. They wanted to make sure that I was going to be safe, my life was going to be going in a healthy direction, etc. I was still seeing her behind everybody's back. Nobody knew I was still seeing her. I couldn't leave. It was a soulmate. When you find that depth of a connection with a lover, that you don't leave it. You want to be with them at all times, and that was the case. So we progress further into it. We get closer to the actual court date, and my parents instilled this thought in me that it fucked with me for so long that it took me many years to even forgive that. It was like an inceptual thought. Friends last longer than love was the thought that they put inside my head. So my thoughts for so many years was that love is insignificant to friendship. Meanwhile, friendship is interconnected to love. But they put it like on this hierarchy scale that was so confusing that I couldn't wrap my brain around it. So it confused me to even think that friends last longer than love. We get further into it. Then my game plan, because of being coerced by my family and the friends at the time, was to go on stand, say, no, it didn't take place. I was basically like the deciding figure inside the case because I was on both sides of the party. But what I was going to do was go say, no, it didn't take place, walk out of the courtroom, and then go kill myself. I didn't want to be a part of a world that I knew I was lying to. So my game plan was to go there, go kill myself. But she died a week prior to the trial from a sudden heart attack, which took many years to find out because her father's side, her biological father, is Jewish. Some Jews don't do autopsies because of religious beliefs. There was about 4 or 5, 6, I don't know how many. Many people on her father's side died of the same heart attack, but nobody knew it took place because of religious belief systems. So I came to find out she contracted that hereditary disease, compounded with all the stress that she was going through, just basically amplified it, and then she died. So my whole world went from me thinking I'm going to kill myself, she's going to live to go forward, to now she's dead, I'm going forward. So it was a complete 180 of thought to what I thought it was going to be. So after she died is then when I went into real darkness. I started to do a lot of opioids. I started to do a lot of alcohol. Just didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to be a part of a world that I wasn't supposed to even be here for. And then the person that I love deeply is now dead. So I went into complete darkness to remove myself from everything. But I was still active. I was still running. I was still lifting. I was still doing activities with the body. But the mind itself was so shut off that it turned into a zombie. But I had to do that to myself, looking back on it. So did that for about 7 years of complete shutout of the world with the opioids. And then one day God came in. Now I can reflect back on it and know that it was God. And God was just like, this isn't who you're supposed to be. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing anymore. Cold turkey, the opioids, never went back to him again. That one day I was playing basketball and my body wasn't moving the right way, and I had to think about it, and then that God's voice came in and was just like, this isn't who you're supposed to be. Cold turkey stopped. Withdrawals, all of that, went through it. Now I reflect back on it, and it's beautiful. Like, I see the whole persona of who I was and what I was releasing and detoxing through all of that, and I find it absolutely beautiful now. From that, moved out to San Diego, couch surfed for a little while in San Diego, and then Where I found an apartment was a block from massage school. When I walked by it probably hundreds and hundreds of times, and then God was like, go in there and look up what this school's about. Didn't know anything about the Eastern world. I was all Western minded, had no concept of meridians, chakras, auric fields, different states of consciousness, the different planes of existence inside of the spiritual world. I had none of that. None of that was comprehended at that point in time. Went in, thought it was amazing. Couldn't go to school outside or out there in San Diego because of the divine. So I moved back to New York, went to school in New York, and then the first day of school was on my 25th birthday. So it was almost like a rebirthing into the being that I was meant to start to become from starting massage school on my 25th birthday going forward. And that's kind of where it all started from, is once I got, it kicked off with the death and the initiation of love, to then being brought into massage school, and then the consciousness then broke open, and that's kind of where the story develops further into.
What would you say to people out there who are in a dark place and struggling through death of a family member, of a soulmate, or even just heartbreak in general? How have you been able to connect the heart and the mind to heal and to move forward with love?
Acceptance. And accepting knowing that this is a part of the existence that we're inside of. Everywhere we look, there's death. Trees die every year, but they come back to life. Animals die in front of you. It's a rebirthing process. It's when we can change the view of what death is, we no longer fear it. We embrace it and actually love death, which is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to love death. We're not supposed to be scared away from it. We're not supposed to feel this apprehension towards it. But I think we have that because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about death at all. We don't acknowledge it. We almost like put it in this container. And like we know it's there. It's like a see-through container that's collapsed inside this box. And we know that death is inside of it, but we don't want to open up this box to actually enjoy it. Because I do firmly believe we're supposed to enjoy death. Yes, of course, sorrow and sadness is a part of death, but it's a part of the healing journey to really bring in what death is supposed to be about, and it's love.
On your Instagram, I saw one of your posts. You had said that healing comes when you quit resisting change. And I thought that was really powerful, because in all of our lives, maybe at one point or another, we can pick up and see when things change and whether or not you're going to ride that wave or let that wave sink you. And what would you say to people who are struggling with change and are afraid to change or believe they're unable to change?
Look at nature. It's what we come from. So if you can, that's why we use the butterfly in such a metamorphosis process. When you look at the process of a butterfly, that's us. Mind, body, soul. The mind has to change, the body has to change, the soul has to change. You use these analogies of nature to apply these changes to life where they're natural. These are natural things. Or look at a snake. How does a snake get bigger? It has to shed its skin. How does a tree get bigger? It has to keep sprouting out more shoots to be able to grow higher and higher, to be able to take in more sun, to be able to take in more water from the rain, or if you're feeding your plants, they have to be able to sprout out more to be able to take in more. It's the same thing as mind, body, soul. You have to be able to sprout yourself out more so to be able to take in. And with any portion of change, uncomfortability is a part of the process. So if you talk to anybody that goes on to any type of spiritual mind or body journey, uncomfortability is going to be a part of that equation, no matter what. So if we stop No, it comes comfort now because you know what it's going to be leading to. So it's not uncomfortable because your perception is changing to what changes. You actually embrace change and you take it on instead of like, oh fuck, oh, can I take this next step? Am I able? Yes, you can, because have you done it before in your past? Yes.
Right.
So embrace it and don't see it as an uncomfortable process. Take it as a comfortable process to know that it's leading you further.
Right. And that helps to see it from the duality standpoint, to see, you know, there's multiple sides to a story. There's multiple ways of looking at things that happen in our life.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned body, mind, and soul.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the body first.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned, you know, through your tough times
Mm-hmm.
that you've been through, you continuously were running, working out. How much did that help you in your spiritual process, and how much of a factor is the body and how we take care of the body?
Think of it as the Holy Trinity or a triangle. You need to have that piece in order for something to be complete. And the body is this mechanism that's made to be in motion. It's an energy current that needs to be amplified. And if you're not amplifying your body through any type of movement, Tai Chi, Qigong, lifting, marathon running, yoga, literally go down the list. Any type of movement, and it varies throughout life. And that's something that I've thankfully been doing to myself, is like I've gone from marathon running to powerlifting to yoga to Tai Chi to Qigong, things like I just mentioned, and just learning about it. So it's just like some days I'm off and I can feel my body being off. And it's like, well, one of these attributes I can tune into to see if I can heal the imbalance of my body, because I know what those practices do to enhance the self. That's physical activity. Then you start thinking about food. What are you putting into yourself? And I fell into the programming early with the veganism. And I heavily thought that was the way to do things and all of that jazz. And it's not wrong. I shouldn't say it that way, because each person equates differently to certain, it's chemicals. It's all chemicals is what this whole thing is. So those chemicals react in a certain way to each person. To me, it didn't work well. So the first time I did it, I did vegan for about 6 months to a year. And then I went into vegetarian, to pescatarian, to keto, and now I'm into carnivore. But what I was doing after I came out of vegan, I then wanted to see how my body reacted to this food. So I went emotional, hormonal, psychological, to spiritual, to how my digestive system was, my nervous system. I was like self-recording all of this stuff to see how my body would react to these foods that I'm now taking into myself. And I can't leave carnivore now. Carnivore it makes the most sense to me in the way my body functions. And every portion of what I was just saying has become heightened. Everything has elevated with myself since I've gone on to the carnivore diet. But you have to feel. You have to really be able to feel yourself. And that's a thing that we have been disconnected from, is to really feel the intuitiveness, which then leads into the chakric system and the meridian system as well, where you have to be able to sense what is in and around you, and is this actually benefiting you, or is it decreasing you from your vitality? And you have to be able to sense it. And sometimes, and it's a process of learning. Everything is practice. No matter what form you're going into, everything is based around practice. Everything. Sports, lifting, reading a book, learning how to swim, how to get into meditation, how to do anything. Everything is based around practice and repetition. And that intuitive sense is also based around practice. You have to feel into your intuitiveness to know, is this the right move I'm making or the wrong move I'm making, and apply that to any experience throughout life.
if you're not putting in good quality things in your body and you're not taking care of your body, that's going to affect your mind. Could you speak a little bit about your understanding of chakras for people that may be not aware?
So leading into the mind, when I came out of doing the opioids, I went into reading nothing but psychology books. I wanted to learn how the mind functioned. I'm also a person, I can't recall definitions. I'm a reader and then applying it to life. I don't know definitions. That's why school was so tough for me, because I don't learn that way. I learn through applying the words to life and how these words are now being equated to the experiences of what I'm doing in this life. So after I came out of the opioids, I started reading psychology books, and I wanted to understand why my brain was functioning the way it did, and the reasonings why it went a certain way, and everything that was causation from the reactions that I was doing. And I got into this book about the subconscious, and I don't remember the title of it, but basically it was talking about how you can program your cells to be what you want them to be. And once I started to read that book, I have trained my cells to think they're always 18 years old. I forget how old I am because I've trained my subconscious to constantly think that my cells are 18 years old. So I'm trying to function at that high velocity of nervous, immune, digestion, metabolism, overall energy, just working at an 18-year-old all the time, no matter what age I turn into. That my body internally is always going to be thinking that. And it wasn't until massage school, so 25, I would say more so towards like 27, is when I started to understand more of the inner components of the energetic realms. And I'm very intuitive to it. So same thing, like definitions, like this chakra is correlated to this. I see things in like a world around me. So like, for example, the past few days, like the cap to my bottle has been slipping off and falling off. Like I'll try putting it on and it'll slip off. So I make the connection of like, well, what is this to? This is the top. What is the top to? Crown. So what is my higher self, what is divine trying to tell me as to why I can't screw on this cap? Is there something that's happening in my crown chakra that is loosening, opening up, that's not firm? Or is it open to start receiving more, because that's why the lid doesn't want to be back on? Right. That it wants to constantly consume more from the crown. So that's why it's open. Or is it saying that it needs to now be balanced with the root chakra? That you need to be able to pull down through the self to the bottom to stabilize yourself more, to then make sure that the cap is now firmly tight. So you can look at it in so many different ways that it's not one universal way of looking at something. There's so many different dynamics.
I just find that fascinating, that mindset that you have, telling your own cells in your body your intention that I want to stay healthy, full of energy, young at this age, and everything is conscious. Mm-hmm. To really let that sink in for a second though, mm-hmm. Everything, the makeup of the universe, atoms, mm-hmm. This microphone right here is conscious, is made of conscious atoms. So if all of our cells in our body are conscious entities or conscious beings, mm-hmm. we have the power to create our reality. And sure, there are obstacles and there are challenges in our path, but I believe a part of reaching that higher self is realizing that we have the power through that consciousness, right. Which leads me to the next question. We hear a lot about religion and people are familiar with Jesus, mm-hmm. and Christ. Mm-hmm. Christ consciousness, what does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. And how can people apply Christ consciousness to their everyday life?
Well, look at him as a figure itself. Was he opposing what the religious dogma is doing? Yes. That's why he was flipping tables inside of the synagogues, because it was all bullshit. Everything is bullshit that's taught inside of the churches. That's not to say that it's not a good place to go because of the atmosphere that's created inside of it, because it is. That's when you can start going into like cymatics and vibrations and different architecture and the structures and how they're created because they amplify, etc. But it all comes back to simplicity. It's we make things complicated. The flesh, the mind makes it complicated. Spirit wants it to be simple. If you do good to others, what are you going to return? Good. That's simple. If you have good thoughts going out, you're going to have good thoughts coming in. It's that simple. It's really not hard. We make it so hard on ourselves because of this. And I was actually thinking about this on the walk with my dog before, thinking about idolatry, that we idolize so much, where why are we idolizing anything? We should be idolizing love. That's what we should be idolizing. Because what does love do? Love is the most ultimate healing that we have. By far, by none, nothing compares to love. But what has happened to us throughout these generations is that we've abused love. So people don't have trust in love because of the abuse of love. So we have to reconstruct this bridge to make sure that love is now becoming this stabilizer for us, to then be able to have anybody and anything, not just humans, but plants and trees and animals, everything is alive, like we're saying. So if everything is alive and we share this love to this entity that is also alive, that means that it can all be radiated from the same source, love. But because of our perception and the traumas that have been inflicted upon us because of love, from family to intimate partners to friendship to business partners to looking outside and looking at nature to see how much destruction has gone down, like all of that is also being infiltrated into us. Mm-hmm. But when we recognize that that's what's taking place, we have the ability to recreate what we want it to be. That's what Christ is also saying, is that you are the creator of your reality. Create what you want, but you have to put the work in. It's not just going to be like this. If you want it to be like this, there's many stages to get to that. And you look at all of these gurus and monks in these Himalayan mountains and in like the Chinese mountains and such like that, where they're able to materialize things and dematerialize things. How are they able to do that? Well, they had to do sacrifices along the way. They had to shed themselves like a snake, like a butterfly, metamorphosizing themselves to get to that state in order to be there, like us. It's the same thing. There is no differences to a monk in the mountains to somebody living in the woods and living in normal society. There is no differences. It's perception. You can attain the same knowledge that they have in the mountains to the same knowledge here. There is no differences.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions or illusions I feel in this reality is the separation and the division. Once we realize that we're really all the same.
Correct.
You know, it's one God, one consciousness.
Correct.
You know, we're just split into trillions and trillions of different, entities and beings, but we all are from the same source, we're all same frequency. Right. We're just at different tunes. You know, I might be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, but that's, I want to say, like, the wars that we have in this society, the hate, a lot of it just comes from the idea that we're different, or there's a difference between being different, but having that same level of understanding that you are
me,
you are you,
you are me, and I am you,
and you're also all the things that you hate and you disagree with and you envy are also a part of you.
Correct.
And that takes a certain level of awareness to come to that realization. But once you do, you set yourself up to no longer be bound by those limitations.
Correct.
you can ascend to a higher level.
To be boundless. That's the point. You have to be boundless, but you have to once be bound to then become boundless.
So speaking about the soul, the spirit, is there a what is your understanding of the spirit?
It's everything. Consciousness and spirit is the same thing. They're synonyms. We have to be able to, this is like deconstructing words. We've looked at words in a very uniform way. We have to be able to look at words in a multi-dimensional way. One single word can be viewed from multi-different vantage points. It's not one single vantage point from one single word. No, it's not true. It can be applied in many different ways. Spirit consciousness, to me, is the same thing, is that it's happening at all times in all places. It's dependent on us, the self, to recognize that it's there in all places and in all things. In ourself, inside of all of our cells, to the skin, to the blanket, to the phone, to the water, to the camera, to everything. The things that you're looking off of and viewing this hot podcast from, consciousness, spirit, it's there. And we all attain to spirit differently, like what you were saying before, how your vibration is going to be different from mine. This whole collective is a symphony. We're all tuned to different vibrations. Your soul resonates to a different vibration. My soul resonates to a different vibration. The people we know resonate to a different vibration. The way to get to your vibration and understanding your vibration is going into yourself. You have to go into your limitations. You have to go into questioning why you react a certain way. You have to go into why things have happened throughout my life and then start connecting the dots as to like, oh shit, that took place then 2 years later something similar took place, and then 2 years later something similar took place. That's the spirit, the divine, that's consciousness, that's God trying to wake you up to realize that this cycle, this pattern that you're on needs to be changed. And once you start recognizing these loops that have happened throughout life and different experiences from different emotions, because that's the ultimate common denominator to everything is emotions. We all have the same emotions. Every single one of us has the same emotions. But it's the life experiences that change from person to person about that emotion. But if we are stunted in our way of being able to talk about our emotional experiences, we're not going to be able to have the full grasp of what each emotion truly is. That is then how we can get closer to spirit, closer to divine, closer to higher states of consciousness, is by understanding emotions and how they have been brought into the self and why they were brought into the self to then transmute those emotions to the higher states. Anger can be love. That there is a point to anger. Like there's 100% a point to anger. But if you were overly consumed into anger, this is when you start looking at emotions and internal organs. If you are overly possessed by anger, you are now limiting your liver. Your liver is connected to anger. So if you are constantly in anger, that liver is not doing what it's supposed to be doing because of the imbalance that's inside of it. So your body's not processing the filtration system. Your filtration system flows through the liver, and if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, well, guess what? All of that anger is still going to be flooded throughout the system because you're not healing what that anger, that root of that anger came from. It could be this life, could be ancestral, could be a past life. There's so many different ways to look at why this anger is coming into, or sadness or depression, whatever the emotion is. There's a reason why it's present, but it's on the self, on you, on my own self, on the people that are listening to go into why that is taking place. You have to do the work. You can read all of the books. You can listen to all the fucking podcasts, but it doesn't make a difference. None of it makes a difference if you're not applying the work. Period. That's where you have to take change with responsibility and accountability in order to raise yourself up to those higher states of consciousness. If we know it's true and it's real, you have to do the fucking work to get up there. All of us, every single one of us.
And if it is true that your higher self chose this reality and chose the path you're on, and it's on us to remember why we chose what we chose and why we choose certain emotions to what we feel. The way that we can help to remember is by being ultra conscious. Something that is conscious is water. You know, I think they say 80% or close to 80% of your body's water.
I think we're more than that. That's, yeah. I think we're almost like 99% because in the cell matrix, there's also water inside of it. So like, yeah, our blood and like our brain has tons of fluid in it. I get that. And that's why I think and the same thing with the organs, where they're getting up to like the 70-75% water. But what about the cells? The cells also need electricity, and where does the electricity flow from? The water. The water sends electricity current to the other cells, to the nervous system, etc., whatever it's going to. But it needs the water to hyperspeed it to be able to send that receptivity out.
I want to talk about Kangen water. What brought you to that discovery and alkaline water? Could you describe briefly what is alkaline water and how does that affect our body?
First, I'll start how I was introduced into it. So it was summer, maybe fall or winter of 2020. I was just getting into my RV, living on a small farm operation in lower New York. And one of my friends from college who I met for one semester, she followed me on Instagram. She reached out to me and was just like, Bryan, like, you would understand what this water is like all about. And she sent me the 10-minute demo video and immediately it clicked. I was like, oh, I get this. This makes total fucking sense. It took me a little while to get the machine because of finances and moving things around. And that's a part of what this water does. To me, water is the most conscious living thing that we have on this planet. It is the most conscious. Me, it's everything. But what it's doing to our bodies in specific is because of how the ionization process and how there's hydrogen created within the water itself from 8.59, 9.5, you are able to permeate your cellular wall, so you're able to get into your cellular wall because of the hydrogen. From that, you're able to detox your cells, but while you're detoxing it, you're also supplying the hydration to where it's supposed to be from just drinking the water. It's when you look at it from an acidic and alkaline state, acidity is basically equivalent to think of like rust on a car. So when you see rust on a car, that means that the foundation of that original metal is starting to deteriorate. That's our cells. When we're drinking acidic water, which I would almost say predominantly all tap and bottled water is acidic, depending on the source of the bottled water. I mean, you'd have to test it, to be honest. But if it's acidic, you're rusting your cells the same way as you see rust on a car. Where our cells and our brain is not supposed to be rusting. It's supposed to be hydrated with this fluid. And how, like we were just saying, how the cells send communication out. Well, if the water inside your body is acidic and it's depleted, is it really sending the messages out as fast as it can? No, the transpondence is weakened. But when you are drinking more of the alkaline water and rising up because you're detoxing the cells, that communication from cell to cell, wherever it is, this is now physically, but then when you start thinking about it spiritually, because you're rising your consciousness, you're able to send that form of communication further out to any location anywhere because of rising your consciousness, because of the water amplifying the consciousness outwardly. But back to the body, it's giving the body the ability to heal is really what it's coming down to, because of how gross our fucking environments are outside, that we're constantly being bombarded with all of this heavy crap that's not allowing ourselves to process. But then when you're drinking this water, because of the detox process, you're able to get rid of the stuff that's out there and within our bodies to then be able to expand yourself that much more. But you have to have, so the ionizer itself has, I wouldn't even call it a pre-filter. It is a pre-filter, but it's not a pre-filter. There's a pre-filtration company that I go with that I recommend to everybody, Multi-Pure, because of their rigorous process and carbon filtered pre-filter to make sure that it can take I think it's 20,000, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's upper to 20,000 gallons of water before you have to change it. But that filtration company is removing the 4 levels of contamination that can be present inside of our water, where many other pre-filtration companies aren't doing the 4 levels of contaminants that's inside of it, where this pre-filtration is. So prior to the ionizer, if there is no pre-filtration, those contaminants are now going to be in the ionizer. So if we're charging our water, that means those contaminants are being charged, which now become more bioavailable into the self. So basically those contaminants have now free access to our cells at a more rapid speed. So pre-filtration, I will not sell a machine to anybody unless they have pre-filtration, period. It's my morals and my ethics into that realm, because I've gone down so many rabbit holes that I would feel so bad thinking that this person now has an ionizer that's charging these contaminants and now they're drinking it. It's almost counterproductive. It's in my eyes. So yeah, if anybody was to buy from me, you're getting pre-filtration first to then get the ionizer.
I'm sure there's been plenty of times where I get upset at myself or upset at something. To accept that as a reality, to feel that, but to see the other side, the duality aspect, to not stay in that state of anger, but to understand the anger, to accept it, to change it.
It's part of the equation. It always has been and always will be. Think about all of these ascended masters. Was there not chaos taking place inside of their life or in the community around them? 100% there was. What have they been trying to tell us? Is that you can remove yourself from the chaos. Even though it's present and it's there and it's part of the equation, does that mean you have to hyper focus on that? You don't have to. If you already know it's there and you know it's always going to be there, that's how you accept it. And you don't allow it to take you over anymore. We've allowed obstacles and problems and disruptions are a part of the existence that we're inside of. But it's if we allow those disturbances and hurdles and things like that to overtake our lives, are we ever going to really become who we're supposed to be? No, because that's what, when you look at it in the world of spirit, because this thing is a huge spiritual warfare, the opposer to love, the opposer to wholeness wants us to stay limited. So if we are staying limited, that means we're in the grasp of control. And if we're in the grasp of control, that means we're being strangled from freedom. And the only way to break free from freedom is to realize that we're being controlled, that we're being apprehended at the soul, to not be able to look past or look through or overcome what is actually taking place, a part of these hurdles, a part of these disruptions, a part of these disturbances that are taking place, because they're always going to be there. So if we know they're always going to be there, that means the solutions are also there. Change the perception of instead of seeing it as, oh, here's another hurdle, I have to be able to get over it. It's, oh, here's another hurdle, I get to get over it.
Right.
You're saying the same words, but you're looking at it completely differently.
Wow.
Because of the tone, because of the perception of what this hurdle now is. It's not, because in the past we may have tried jumping over this hurdle and we caught our foot and then we scraped our knee and then we had to pick ourselves back up and then start the race again. And then as we're getting closer to it, oh crap, here comes another hurdle. And then we try jumping, then we miss or we fall or whatever the case may be. That's part of the process. How did you learn how to ride a bike? You had to have training wheels. After you got off the training wheels, you were on 2 wheels. And I guarantee you fell. It's the same thing as the spirit. It's the same thing as seeing these hurdles. Until you realize, like, oh, I do have the stability muscles. Oh, I do have the coordination to be able to ride this bike. The same thing as spirit. It's being able to recognize that the material or physical experiences we go through have to and must be applied to the spiritual realm of understandings, because that's how we make the deeper connections. Things that happen here is also happening here. They're simultaneously taking place, but it's our duty to be able to link the two. When we can link the two, that means there is no separation, that is no division, which is what's stopping us from unity, is not being able to use these two worlds and link them together, to see that they are speaking the same exact thing. There is no differences between it.
Many of us have heard about manifesting and the law of attraction and manifestation. What is the thing that people are not understanding or getting wrong when trying to manifest their reality?
Work. Do the work. Period. I don't subscribe to any of this shit on social media. I think it's all, not all of it. We have to remember that there's going to be snakes in all forms of grass. There's going to be snakes that are trying to tell us something, to trick us. There's going to be snakes in every field of study. There is a snake inside of it. And snakes. There's snakes inside of every field. This goes back to intuition and being able to discern. How is this person talking? Is their hands like making certain gestures and doing things? Is their tone of their voice making me feel uncomfortable? What's the setting inside the room? Is the setting inside the room that they're talking and making this video, is it making you allure and make you feel some type of way? You have to be able to feel this. To me, it's God gave us a vision, God gave us a dream. We have to do the work. Period. Whatever the work is, because there is no one single answer to be able to create it, because you're different. Your vibrational state is different from my vibrational state. Their vibrational state is different from my vibrational state. You have to know your vibration and know why you have to overcome these hurdles to create the vision or dream that God gave you. Every single person is different. Every single one. But it's you have to put the work in mind, body, soul in order to create, to manifest, to bring that thing to life, whatever it is.
Is there any message that you apply mentally or, through, the work that you put in, that you tell yourself that you can give to others, as far as something that works,
Pattern recognition, recognizing patterns. It's the simplest thing. It's if you know something has to be changed within the self, and you're being given opportunities from the divine to do it, and you're not doing it, to me, because of my past and how I see my belief system now, that's an addiction. You're addicted to not changing because you're scared of what the outcome is going to be. But when you trust the divine and you have faith in God, knowing that the changes are being presented to you for a reason and you're not acting on those changes, it's because you're addicted to your comfortable state of not wanting to become better. And I still have limitations within myself too. Like, I still have it, but I'm recognizing them. I want to change these limitations within myself. And from all of the changes that I've gone through, and I know you look at me from 3 years ago, I would not be talking the way I do now. I wouldn't have the thought processing I have. I wouldn't be able to communicate the way that I do. You look at from 5 years ago, There was no way. There was nothing to how I am now that's comparable to who I was 5 years ago, because I've just hit this point where I realized that change is inevitable. Change is constant. That is the one constant thing inside of any equation, and it's change. Change is always going to be there. But if we avoid change, whatever it is, from not talking to a family member, not talking to a friend, moving to a different environment, or resolving a situation with a family member, to communicating differently to a family member, communicating different to a friend, changing jobs and moving to a different job, knowing that it fills more joy with yourself. Those are all things that we have to do. And if we know that it's being presented to us in the fields of consciousness and we're not reacting to it, yes, it will come back again, because God wants us to evolve and rise. He wants every single one of us to do it, but it's our free will to accept what these changes and these patterns that are being presented that we must attain to. And if we're not doing it, we have to question why we're not doing it. Why are we not taking advantage of the Spirit sending to us what needs to be done? It's question everything. If you don't question anything, you will never find answers to what you're looking for. Mind, body, soul. You have to question. And there's been times that I've questioned so many times about one single thought. One thought I've questioned numerous times. God even said to me, and that's one thing I'm very grateful that I've been able to attain this very close communication with God and be able to not visibly, but audibly understand his voice and know that his voice is different from my voice. But it was knowing that it was being presented in such a way that it was on my free will of choice to actually accept it in or not to accept it in. And that if I did not accept it in, that it would come back again in another course, in another fashion for myself to elevate again. But if you pick up on it faster, healing becomes faster. And I see healing and destruction as two snowballs that roll down a mountain. Destruction is a slow snowball that constantly goes down. Doesn't really change size, doesn't really change that much. It's just a snowball that just constantly goes down. Healing, as you fall down more of this mountain, as the snowball goes down, it gets faster and bigger. Because as you heal more, you take in more knowledge and you take in more wisdom because of what the healing is doing to you. Change the perception. If you're constantly complaining and looking at pain in a negative way, start seeing pain in a way of love, and then that pain starts to be transmuted into healing, and then that healing goes forward.
That's powerful.
Because pain is love. And we have the ability to change the neural pathways. That's the beauty of our mind. We perceive pain as bad. Why? All it is a chemical reaction. That's all that it is. Pain is just a chemical reaction. So if you want to change the chemical reaction to love, so every time you feel an emotional pain, you can change that emotional pain into love like that. So are you ever going to feel pain again? To my eyes, no. I'm not there yet. But will I get there? 100% I plan on getting there. That's something. I don't feel like being in pain. By the end of my life, I don't feel like being in pain. I want to be completely engrossed inside of spirit and inside of love, that I no longer have to feel that sensation of pain because I've rewired and reprogrammed my entire self to see pain as love.
Wow. Gonna have to.
Yes. Yes.
I want to wrap it up. What would you tell yourself from 5 years or even 10 years ago? What if you could speak to yourself in that reality and tell that person, or to help guide that your younger self? What would you tell yourself?
It gets better. It's the discomfort you feel within yourself is part of the process to be liberated, to enjoy the discomforts, to enjoy the vulnerabilities, to enjoy all of the lower vibrational states, because without those lower vibrational states, you will not understand the higher vibrational states. And to embrace it, just to know that it's a part of it. It's to become this boundless, this eternal being that we are. You have to understand what the casings and the wrappings and the sarcophagus feeling of being trapped inside of something, because we're all trapped. We're all trapped inside of this matrix of bullshit, because it's how we've been controlled for so many generations, for so many thousands of years. We've been controlled because if we were ever to become boundless, we realize that everything that has been told to us was nothing but lies. That we're not living the truth, that we know what the truth is. And the only way to discover it, and I said it on the story yesterday, and it's something that I'm really attaining into, is even the lies that I was told 5 years ago, 10 years ago, was still the truth. It was always the truth. It's just I had to see the lies in a way to see the truth. Even the lies at whatever age, no matter how many hundreds and thousands of years ago, those lies are still the truth. No matter which way you look at it, it's still the truth. You have to be able to look into it and sense it and be a part of it to know that the only way to exit this construct of control is to go into it. You have to go into it to know that you're safe. You have to go into it knowing that you're protected, that you're loved, that what you search for will be brought forth. And the only way to do it is to question and to find the answers that you're searching for. But the only way to do it is to question every motherfucking thing that has ever happened within your own life, within history, within every single thing that we know. You have to question it. And that within itself is very hard to do. To question anything is very hard, but we have to do it. It's the only way to be able to resolve these imbalances to the mind, body, soul. And if we're not willing to do it, well, guess what? You're always going to suffer. And to suffer is your own choice. To suffer is you. Nobody else is telling you to suffer. You're choosing to suffer. When I suffered, it was my own choice. It was my suffering. It wasn't anybody else's. I chose to suffer. Nobody was telling me to suffer. Internally, I was suffering in here. I was suffering in my body. I was suffering in my soul. But I was making that free will choice to suffer. Nobody was saying that to me.
Wow.
Nobody was knowing that I was suffering on the inside. But until you make the realization that you are causing your own suffering, is then when you can relinquish that suffering to be then liberated, to be free, to be boundless, to be whatever you know is true within your heart, within your mind, and within your soul.
Wow. Bryan, that's powerful, man. We got to end it on that. Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate you so much, man.